That's eagle.
There we go.
There we go.
What's up guys, Tal Ressin here, back with another beginner guide for everybody's golf. In this guide, I want to go over putting. Now, as in real golf, putting in this game is one of the, if not the most important skill to master, especially if you're looking to compete at the highest levels of play. You really do need to be able to bang them in from 20, 25 feet and so on with a fair bit of consistency. So we'll just go over exactly what goes into a putt and what putting entails, and we'll break it up into two parts. First, we'll talk about getting the distance of the putt right, which just involves using a mathematical formula. And then we'll talk about the aim of the putt, which is a little bit more feel-based. So as far as distance is concerned, we're just going to apply this nice little formula, and we're going to do that for all our shots, and that's going to ensure that the distance portion is taken care of. So the distance is actually fairly easy to nail down once you get used to the formula, and it works like this. So the two numbers that we want to consider are the elevation and the remaining distance to the cup. So our first step is we're going to take the elevation number and we're simply just going to multiply that number by 10. And that's going to give us the number we're going to use in our formula. Next, we're going to add or subtract, depending on if it's an uphill or downhill lie, that number from the remaining distance. So in this case, we're going to add it to the remaining distance. And then finally, we're going to add 1 foot per 15 feet of distance remaining. And the reason we do that is because we don't want the ball to stop at the hole. We want it to go a little bit past the hole. And the reason for that is if your putt never gets to the hole, if you hit it too short, it never had a chance. Whereas if you hit it too hard, there's a range of putts in the too hard category that will still go in. So we always want to err on making sure it has a chance to go in. And so we add additional distance there. Now, this is the rule that I use, but I've heard some other people use a rule like they'll add 1 foot if they're putting with the green bar, 2 feet if they're putting with the purple bar, or 3 feet if they're putting with the blue bar. That's not a bad rule as well. I like to use this rule, but if I have a putt that's like 28 feet or something like that, I'm going to err on the side of adding 2 feet, even though I said 1 foot per 15. So if it's 27 or trending towards 30, I'll add the 2 feet. Always sort of err on the side of adding just a little bit extra distance. So once we have that, we can then just plug those numbers in. So we're going to take our 0.6 feet and we're going to times it by 10 and we get 6. We're then going to add that to the remaining distance. So 18 plus 6 is 24. And then we got 18 feet here, so adding 1 foot for good measure should be fine. So we have 24 plus 1 is 25. And that's it. That is our target number. So we're going to head into the putt looking to hit a 25 here. So if I draw your attention down to the bar, usually you're kind of concerned about the percentages, but for putting, we really don't care about the percentages. What we do care about is what each increment on the bar represents in terms of distance. And this is something that you'll just eventually memorize after time. Like, I don't actually have to sit there and count each increment. I just kind of know where everything is, and after a little while, it'll come naturally. So that's what's important to know for the bar. So now that I have my target number of 25, I know where 24 is. So I'll pick a spot just a little bit left of that, just a little bit past that to get the 25, and boom, I'm all set. So I'm going into the shot trying to aim for that spot, and that way if I know if I hit it a little bit too far or a little bit under that spot, I can then fine tune it to push it towards that 25. So that is the formula, guys. That is pretty much it. It's a little bit tedious to have to apply it on every hole, but the more you do it, the faster you'll be able to do it going forward. And like I said, distance shouldn't be what's holding you back in putting. This should be a fairly straightforward thing that you're able to master. So let's look at one more example here.
It's uphill. Brakes left. Nice bird.
All right, so let's look at another example, this time with a downhill putt. So we're going to use the exact same formula here. Again, we want to pay attention to the number of the elevation and the remaining distance. So we're going to multiply the elevation by 10 again, in this case giving us 3. And because it's downhill, we're going to subtract that number now from the remaining distance. And again, we're still going to add the 1 foot per 15 feet of distance. That rule is applied. It's still added on whether it's an uphill or downhill shot. And again, that's just to ensure that the ball goes a little bit past the hole, if anything. When we get into examples of severely downhill shots, that's where the rule kind of starts to fall apart a little bit. But if it's anything like under 6, then this rule will be fine. So just adding 1 per 15 feet. So in this case, we have 0.3 times 10 equals 3. We're going to subtract that from the remaining distance. So 17 minus 3 gives us 14. And 14 plus 1 foot for good measure is going to give us 15. So again, we look at the bar, that is our target number, and we're going to find 15 on the bar, which in this case is extremely easy because it's right in the halfway point. And that is going to be our target shot, and we'll go from there. So that pretty much does it for nailing down the distance. Like I said, the formula does start to fall apart a little bit if you have an extreme downhill elevation that's over a long distance. So if it's like down 12 or 1.2, down 12 and 40 feet long, the third part of the formula then starts to not apply because the ball has so much momentum that you don't want to be adding any yardage. But that's kind of a fringe example, and I'll maybe save going into that for an advanced putting guide. Right now, I just want you to focus on that formula because that's going to serve you well for 95% of your putts. The only other thing I want to mention is if you're putting on a wet green, so if it's raining out, you'll notice that your lie indicator is going to show you that you're only going to get 90 or 95% of what you would normally get. So just kind of factor that in as well. It's not variable like it is on the fairway, so it's not going to say 95 to 100. It'll just tell you straight up whether you're going to get 90 or 95. So you just kind of have to make an additional calculation to compensate for that. All right, let's talk now about aim. So here we have a putt that is breaking moderately to the right. And unfortunately, we can't just plug in a little mathematical formula here. That'd be nice, but we have to kind of just feel it out. So putting is heavily relies on visualization, I find. Like, I always find myself imagining the ball traveling down the line and kind of using that as my main guideline. But what I do to sort of narrow it down is I want to find the square that the cup is in. So I use the lines on the grid here, and I keep going until I'm sure that I'm going to miss to the left. So I'm gonna put the cup right up against the line here, and I'm looking at that. I'm thinking that's going to miss left. So that's my boundary line on the one side. And then I'm going to try to find my other boundary line on the other side. So I'm going to use the line again. And I think that's going to miss right. So now I've got the square down. So it's just a matter of fine tuning it within the square. So I'm going to go back to my spot here and move it a little bit in. Take a look. The whole time I'm visualizing the putt. I'm just imagining the putt traveling down the line and trying to figure out how it's going to react. And the only way you get really good at that is by just doing it a whole bunch of times and watching it. So I like to find the aim. I like to aim my shot first and then go and apply the distance formula once I found my spot, and it works for me doing it that way. So unfortunately, there's no shortcuts here. It just takes time, effort, and practice. And but like I said, you can use the lines to at least find the box that you believe the hole is in, and that'll help you a little bit. So here I have a downhill putt that has a double break in it. And before I break down the putt itself, I just want to talk a little bit about the difference between uphill and downhill putts and how that's going to affect your decision making when you make your shots. Downhill putts break more than uphill putts do. So if I had the exact same putt but one was uphill and one was downhill, the downhill putt would break quite a bit more given the same movement on the green. Has something to do with the gravity, or I'm not sure of the physics behind it, but I can tell you for sure that downhill putts move more. So when you're setting up your shots, tee shots on par 3s and approach shots on par 4s and par 5s, you want to go and take a look at the green and err on the side of giving yourself an uphill putt. There's times where you can be 5 feet from the hole but have a really difficult downhill putt that breaks quite a bit, and I'd rather be 2 or 3 times further away but have a nice, easier uphill shot. So that's something to always consider. It's not always just closer to the pin is better. You know, closer with an uphill putt is better. So something to keep in mind as you're making those shots. So now for this putt, just to get into it here. So for this putt, it's a double breaker, and it's downhill. And for double breakers specifically, you want to look at how long and how severe the double break is for each direction. So here I can see they're pretty much the same distance. They each have the break for 4 or 5 squares, but the break at the start, the left break here at the start, is a little bit more severe, and the starting break is also just going to have a little bit more of an influence because the ball velocity is low when it first hits the break. So it's hard to kind of visualize double breakers, and you have to really kind of just get familiar with them to understand how they work. But you see, I'm kind of going in here, looking at how it's breaking, looking at how severe the break on the other end is. But I decide here that the break at the start is more severe, so I'm going to err on the right side. But I still want to make sure. I still want to push it to the left here just to make sure. Look at it visually and be like, okay, that doesn't make sense. So let's move over to the right. It seems to be making a little bit more sense here. And now it's a matter of just picking my spot, picking my location. And again, I'm just visualizing the whole time, kind of imagining what's going to happen. It's tough for double breaks because you have to visualize the ball moving one direction and then trying to curl back as it gets towards the hole here. And again, I'm going to find my spot first, and then I'm going to apply my formula, my distance formula. So once I've set on a spot, I'll start the bar. I actually figure I hit it a little bit too far, so I use the circle fine tune to knock it down a bit. And I'm going to take advantage of the very generous backdoor mechanic in this game for that putt to go in. So that is more or less going to do it for the putting tutorial. I mean, I could sit here and just show you putts over and over and over again, but as far as aim goes, it really just comes down to feel, and the only way you're going to get that feel ingrained is just through practice. So just keep practicing, keep being reflective of your shots as always, and eventually the aim will come. And on the distance side, you should be all good to go with that formula. Like I said, that'll work for you for 95% of your putts. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. As always, thanks for watching. If you're finding these videos helpful or useful, please feel free to subscribe. And I'll catch you next time when we talk about chipping.